And welcome, everyone. My name is Isabella Esposito, and I'm an Equal Opportunity Specialist at the City of Dayton Human Relations Council. And today's Fair Housing Collaborative Lunch and Learn is facilitated by the HRC and Miami Valley Fair Housing Center. As as Fair Housing Initiative and Assistance Program certified under HUD, part of our mandate is to provide high-quality housing training and resources to our residents.
Thank you, everyone. And I just wanted to introduce our first speaker for the morning. We have Jules Rasitikis. Jules is, and just on my paranoid, can everyone hear me fine?
Yes.
Fantastic. All right, we have Jules Rasitikis. He is the president of the Salem Avenue Business Association. Jules is also the owner and a broker with Manco Property Management, and he'll be providing us with an update on the Dayton Peace Corridor development projects.
Tell us everything that's going on with SABA and up and down Salem Avenue.
Well, obviously we've now rebranded Salem Avenue as the Salem Avenue Peace Corridor, which happened a long time ago. But there's been a lot of interest in reinvestment along the corridor. I think that historically, the last several years, I'm going to say 10 years, there's been a lot of investment along the corridor, but it's just not recognized or noticed. You've got the Dayton Art Institute, you've got the Masonic Center, you've got Reichert Buick, you've got the Gem City Market, you've got Grand Place. So there's been a lot going on. So again, we have historically there's been a good amount of investment put into the corridor. But as far as the newer things coming down the pipeline, Longfellow Commons is going to be a $55 million mixed-use project. It's going to include housing. There's going to be housing in the old school building. There's going to be new housing. It's on the same campus. There's also going to be some opportunities for commercial space. There's going to be the auditorium is being refurbished. It's going to be used as like a visual arts theater, music scene. There's going to be a speakeasy, little restaurant, bar involved. There's going to be a little pharmacy that's going to serve the community. And this is all under the auspices of United Church Homes, which they've got a great track record on any projects they've done. They work a lot in Ohio and got a lot of great housing projects. So we're really happy that they're going to be involved and spend that kind of money, actually taking up a whole block of Salem Avenue. And I think what's interesting too is that it is LGBTQ focused, which I think there's great need for that, and I'm glad that the Peace Corridor is going to be able to be part of the place where that community gets served. I think there's great potential there. The National Church Residences, they've got actually two projects. One is at Grand Place, which is at Salem and Grand. They've done a $15 million upgrade. And what's really interesting about that is along the corridor, the apartments along the corridor are being taken out, and they're open for retail space, which this is one of the first redos that there's been on Salem Avenue for retail space in many, many years. So we're really happy to see that. Also, they're moving up the road toward Grace United Methodist Church, where the old Dartmouth Hospital building is. That is coming down along with the St. Andrews, the church, old church. And there's going to be a 125 unit housing project that's going to be built on that site. The demolition of the buildings is supposed to start yet this year. And then the building's going to be completed probably sometime in 2026. So we're really looking forward to that. What's really impressive is that we're seeing that there are investors that are understanding the need, the demand, and the need there is for housing along the corridor. And it's really, I think it's going to be a big driver of the future of the corridor. As you come up the street, I know Manco Property Services has actually taken a lot that's adjacent to our building, and we've added it to the campus, and it is we've been working on this for several years. It is now the Manco Urban Meadow Community Park. So we got this idea. It's a meadow. That's how the whole started. The whole thing started about 3 years ago as a meadow, and it's now in its third year. And it is we have pollinators in it. We've got animals, rabbits and squirrels that are housing that. It's really the meadow's doing what it's supposed to do. And so when we put the meadow in, we decided that we should open it up to the public. So we created it a park. We created a park. So there's a shed that Manco uses, and that shed, there's a deck on the shed. We've got a lending library, and we opened up the lending library about 6 or 8 weeks ago, and we're getting great use on that. And we're inviting the public. There are benches near the shed that people can just sit and enjoy. And it's a well-maintained green space. So we're really happy about that. Again, further as you come up the road to Salem and Philadelphia, the YMCA, Phoenix Next, has partnered with the YMCA and a couple other entities to build a YMCA, and that's probably about a year old now. And obviously it's replaced Good Sam Hospital on the 33 acres there, and the United or the YMCA part is taking up 5 acres, so there's going to be more development on that site. But first they started with the YMCA, and I think what's really impressive about that is that's one of the first health preventive maintenance facilities that's been on Salem Avenue for a long time, and we're really happy about that. It's very popular. There are 1,200. They now have 1,200 members. And so it's obvious that there's been demand for recreational types of activities, and I'm glad the YMCA put the building there because they are serving a great need for the community. Those are the projects that are in the works that we know a lot about. I'm sure there are other ones we're not aware of. But I did forget one major project that the city of Dayton is responsible for, as they've begun the resurfacing project of Salem Avenue. They've completed the first 2 phases from Riverview up to probably around Delaware Avenue, and they've done a great job. There are bike lanes. It's been resurfaced. The lighting is beautiful. It's turn of the century lighting. It's really a great look, and I know that anybody who's driven that corridor for any length of time, I know your car is happy because now it's a smooth ride versus what it used to be. So we're very grateful for the city for doing that. And also, I must say that the city's doing a great job on demos. There have been some significantly abandoned and really in poor condition buildings that have been taken down that should have been taken down a long time ago. And we're really happy that those buildings are now gone and there are green spaces. So speaking of that, one of the things that SABA is working on, uh, we've got a beautification committee, and what's happening in that committee is we're working on making Salem Avenue, improving the curb appeal, and curb appeal is vital for Salem Avenue and its potential growth. So we've applied for a grant to do planters on the lower part of Salem Avenue, and we've also now identified 8 vacant lots that we want to do urban meadows along the corridor on those vacant lots. So that's the kind of stuff that the business or the beautification committee is working on. Another thing we're working on, and I think this is really going to be the future of Salem Avenue, is we're working on a grand vision. And I know one of the questions here to address was, well, what's the future of Salem Avenue? Well, actually, it's very bright. The potential for Salem Avenue becoming a vital, vibrant, bustling community is really, I think it's a no-brainer in my view. So what's happening is we've based this vision on a study that Wright State did for us several years ago, talking about the feasibility of retail on Salem Avenue, and if basically what the study showed us is that the Salem Avenue Peace Corridor area, if you look at that area, the money that is spent on retail services from people who live in that area, who have to go outside of it to spend, that money they spend is well over $300 million a year. So that's why I say it's a no-brainer that the corridor has great potential to be a provider of retail services, entertainment, and recreation, both for the immediate community, and we believe it can become a regional draw. And so to that end, what we're working on, and we're almost completed now, is again what we call our grand vision. And what we've done is we've taken we've taken information from the community, from the study, from different entities along the community, and we've asked them to help us identify what types of businesses, what types of services, what types of needs does your constituency have, and we are filling in along the corridor in this vision what these businesses could be and where they could be located. We're really excited about this project because if anybody remembers or is familiar with Stephen Covey, his whole thing was begin with the end in mind. And we do have the end in mind about what Salem Avenue could be, and that grand vision is that. We will be making a presentation of that grand vision probably sometime early 2025. Hopefully all of you will be able to participate and see what that's going to look like. It's very exciting. And that's why we really think that the future of the Peace Corridor is extremely bright. And in fact, we're not recreating any wheels here. There are other communities that have these types of corridors that are highly, highly, highly successful. And there's no reason we can't do that too. So again, we're very happy about what the future could be for the corridor.
All right, fantastic. And Jewel, I actually see a question from the chat regarding the housing, and it actually dovetails into a question that I had myself. So we have the question from the chat regarding whether the housing will be market rate rent or based on income. I know that we had a presentation previously where they spoke to that. My question would just be looking into long term, are there ideas on ways to center affordability along the Peace Corridor as these investments are coming into place?
Well, you know, again, I think I think affordability, yeah, in the vision, uh, you know, what we want to see is workforce housing, affordable housing, market rate housing, and higher end housing. I think that, you know, all those things can be a blend. And and again, the vision is going to show that, you know, we don't want to homogenize or displace anybody. And I don't think that's going to happen along the corridor. And I think the main reason for that is that if you look at where gentrification has happened and where this displacement's happened, it's where these rehab or these redevelopment projects are extremely expensive. For example, over the Rhine, you know, to redevelop one of those buildings, you know, they take those buildings almost down to the nub, and they're they're redone. All they have is a shell. That's very expensive. Well, I don't believe that there's any of that kind of work that's going to have to happen along the corridor, because I think there are existing buildings that are in pretty good shape that can be repurposed. And also, if you build new, it's not going to cost near the amount that it's taken these, for example, over the Rhine to build. And again, I guess to make sure that I'm clear here is if you have to put a lot of money into rebuilding a building or rehabbing a building, the rent's going to be high, and well, high rent means you got to pay more for services for whatever the product you're selling or you're providing. I don't believe that that's going to happen. I believe that the cost of the building and the land is not going to be that expensive. Hopefully, that will relate into lower prices on retail and services.
Fantastic, thank you. And Marcine, we actually had a previous presentation from the Longfellows group regarding their housing development, and we're happy to get that information to you. Tom, what we're going to do is probably we're going to need to start skipping along a little bit, just make sure we get to everything. But any questions we don't answer now, we're going to gather all the questions, get information, ask people after the fact. So Jewel, again, thank you so much. And our next speaker
Welcome.
would be we have Marty Gehres. And Marty is the Clerk of Courts of the Dayton Municipal Court. He is a lifelong resident of the city of Dayton. He was elected Clerk of Courts in 2021. And before being the Clerk of Courts, he began his career as a deputy clerk in the Dayton Municipal Court and served as an attorney for the city of Dayton, including assisting the Human Relations Council. And Marty will be presenting on eviction sealing initiative in the city of Dayton. Thank you, Marty.
Thank you, Samba. Hello, everybody. I'm Marty Gehres. I'm the Clerk of Court of the Dayton Municipal Court. Thank you all for coming today. So what I'm here to discuss is the new rule in Dayton Municipal Court that allows the sealing of previous eviction records. So as Samba introduced me before, just a little bit about myself. I am a lifelong resident of the city of Dayton. I was born and raised in the Five Oaks area, which is on the Salem corridor. So thanks for all the hard work you guys are doing there. I began my career as a deputy clerk in the Dayton Municipal Court. Then I was served as an attorney for the city of Dayton. I graduated from the University of Dayton School of Law. Just a little bit of background information about what municipal courts are and what we do. The Dayton Municipal Court is one of 7 municipal courts here in Montgomery County. The Dayton Municipal Court handles cases that occur in the city of Dayton jurisdictional limits. Those cases would be minor misdemeanor and misdemeanor traffic complaints and criminal complaints and civil matters that are under $15,000. Some of the most amount of work that we do here involve evictions and wage garnishments. So when somebody needs their property back, typically they file in municipal court. So where does eviction ceiling come from? The eviction ceiling rule that we implemented here in the Dayton Municipal Court, it basically comes from the power that the Ohio Supreme Court has given to the judges and the municipal court as a whole in Supplemental Rule 45, which provides that a court can restrict public access to a court record when it finds by clear and convincing evidence that the presumption of public access is outweighed by a higher interest. As a result of this rule, the Dayton Municipal Court added Section Q, which is sealing of eviction records, to Local Court Rule 3.71, which is our rule relating to evictions here in the city of Dayton. This rule allows for individuals to file to seal an eviction record. Basically, when somebody files a seal and it is granted by the court, what we do is we take the record, we put it in an envelope, and it goes back and is removed from all of our system unless somebody files to reopen that sealed case and there's a decision made by the judge. It's outside of public access. The city of Dayton here, our Dayton Municipal Court, has joined Cuyahoga County, Franklin County, Hamilton County, and the city or Toledo Municipal Court in implementing an eviction sealing rule to help tenants and people out who have many eviction records on their many eviction records. So to determine whether or not somebody is eligible for an eviction sealing, the first thing anybody needs to do is determine where this eviction occurred. Did it occur in the jurisdiction of the Dayton Municipal Court, or did it occur in Oakwood Municipal Court, Miamisburg Municipal Court, Vandalia Municipal Court, Kettering Municipal Court, or Eastern or Western Division of the Montgomery County Municipal Court? So each one of these areas, each one of these courts have different rules. And Dayton is the only one that has an eviction sealing. It would be fantastic if everybody, all the other surrounding courts would adopt similar rules to this. As many of you know, evictions don't just happen in the city of Dayton, but it happens throughout the entire Miami Valley region. It would be even greater if the Ohio state legislature would implement something like this on a statewide level. To really be able to assist people get to remove these records from their, or these evictions from their record. So basically there are a number of different situations that individuals can have when they come to file for an eviction sealing. 3 of them are typically the same. So the first one is if an individual claim, so the eviction is dismissed by the court, then that individual would have to wait 60 days before they could have that record sealed. The same thing would be if the judgment is awarded in favor of the defendant or tenant. And finally, if it's dismissed by a plaintiff or the landlord before the court date. So if a settlement or something is reached before the court date actually happens and the hearing is not heard on its merits, then that's another 60-day wait. And after that, they can file for this eviction sealing process and have that record sealed. Now, if an eviction was granted, it gets slightly more complicated. First, if it is granted, then the tenant/defendant would have to wait 6 days from the judgment on the first cause of action. So some people wonder what's the difference between a first cause of action and a second cause of action. Typically speaking, a first cause of action is basically for that property to be evicted and to turn over possession back to the landlord or the housing provider. The second cause of action is typically for money damages or back payment of rent and everything else. So if the eviction is granted, the first cause of action needs to be done for 6 months, and there can't be any outstanding amounts owed in the second cause of action. In addition to that, the defendant and tenant has to have had no other eviction filings in the Dayton Municipal Court for the past 3 years. So that is an important aspect of it. Here in the Dayton Clerk of Court's office, we get a number of questions concerning whether or not people are eligible for this. So I have a couple of scenarios to run through to hopefully explain this further. So scenario one is basically John Smith has 3 evictions. One is in 2023, and then 2 are in 2014. Are all 3 of these eligible for eviction sealing? The answer is no, because he has an eviction in the last 3 years. His evictions in 2014 are not eligible for sealing, but the eviction from 2023 would be eligible. So basically, they would have to seal that first one and then within a period of time come back and try to seal those other ones. Scenario 2 that we get here frequently when people call in and ask us questions is if Jane Doe has 3 evictions on her record, one in 2014, one in 2018, and one in 2019, but nothing in the last 3 years. Are her cases eligible? The answer then would be yes. There are no cases in the last 3 years, so she's eligible to seal all of those. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, you can always reach out to the self-help center here in the Dayton Municipal Court or contact an attorney, and they'll be able to explain this more fully to you. So what basically is a process that happens after a eviction sealing is filed here? First, notice is going to be provided to the landlord or the landlord's attorney, the housing provider. So somebody comes in and files it. The clerk of court then mails out a notice to basically the plaintiff that will say there has been somebody that has requested a sealing of this. Do you have a response? The plaintiff, landlord, housing provider will then have 21 days to file a written response to that request to be sealed. So basically, that's just like any other thing that happens in court. You have 21 days to respond to whatever's been filed to you. If there is no response and nobody requests a hearing, then there's no hearing that will be heard. The judge will rule on it on the merits of the filing that has been sent in to us or filed with the clerk. However, if either party requests a hearing, then there will be a hearing here in Dayton Municipal Court to determine whether or not the eviction sealing shall be granted. So the merits of the case would be heard. If after that hearing process, if there is a hearing that occurs, then the magistrate or a judge here in the Dayton Municipal Court will issue their ruling. So basically, this is an entry that will go out and write in that explains why they are sealing this case. The entry will be mailed to all parties. So that's the defendant or the tenant that has filed for this eviction to be sealed, and likewise the attorney and housing provider that is there. Finally, if it has been sealed and the ruling is it will be sealed, that will take us 14 days. Basically, this 14-day period is a period where if anybody has any objection, they can file and contest it. After that 14 days, then the case will be sealed and it will be put back in a special room with basically in a manila envelope that nobody can see unless somebody files to reopen the case. So if you would like to set up a clinic with us here in the Dayton Municipal Court and our self-help center, please take a picture of this QR code and we'd be happy to come out and assist individuals filling out the forms for the filings. The filings right now and for the foreseeable future are free to file. So if you do have people who are able to file to have their eviction sealed, please let them know about this and to get people out there the knowledge that they can do it. We would love to be able to partner with anybody who is willing to, for us to come out to the community and hopefully get as many filings of these as possible. In addition to our services for the eviction sealing, the Dayton Municipal Court Self-Help Center. We provide a variety of different things to really assist individuals out there get on the right track and get things taken care of. Some of these most important ones that we do provide are driver's license reinstatement clinics, criminal record sealings, having filings for people to obtain driving privileges and explain the forms basically that we have. Now, I will give you the disclaimer here. Everybody who works in the clerk's office is prohibited from giving legal advice or guidance. So we cannot tell people how to file or what to file, but we can explain forms that we have and what needs to go where. So if people do have legal advice or legal questions, we always refer them over to the Dayton Bar Association, ABLE, or other resources that they could really understand what is going on with their specific legal issue. If you would like to work with us, please take down our information here. 937-333-4383 is the Self-Help Center. We would love to do as many of these as possible to get this out there and people knowing that this does exist.
And Marty, thank you so much. I know that this has been a project long in the making, so it's fantastic to see it finally launched. I know that kind of like in your tenure as clerk, of course, we've seen the self-help center really get built out. We're seeing this eviction ceiling. It seems like this is really a story around providing wraparound services. So what do you see as kind of like the next big innovation that would really assist the public?
So what we are prioritizing right now is getting as many of our resources online as possible, and then setting up appointments that people can come in and set up appointments with the Self-Help Center staff through an online portal that we could have individual conversations with people. As we all know, people are typically intimidated when they come into court. I find that a little odd because by trade, I am an attorney, so court does not intimidate me, but most people are afraid to come down here in court. So we're really trying to build out that operation and get folks who are maybe intimidated out here that an opportunity to receive the resources that we do have.
And I'm just going to make sure that I keep us on time. So I'm going to see if I can get some of these questions from chat. We have that question from Shem. And the question is, are these going to be blanket ceilings, or is it case by case?
The ceilings are only those people who file to have something sealed. We can't do a blanket ceiling. So it's not, hey, every 5 years we'll wipe everything. It has to be a case-by-case analysis, and then the judge has to determine if the interest of public access is outweighed by the interest of having this sealed for the individual who is filing.
Okay. And Shem, I'll confess that I don't fully understand the question, but is there an eviction sealing notification that would be served to all previous housing providers?
I don't really understand the previous housing. So it would be provided to the individuals who are associated with that case.
And we have the question from Marcine. What is the cost associated with this?
The cost for the individual filer or the cost to the court for doing it?
I believe the cost is someone is seeking to get their eviction sealed. What is the cost associated with that?
Right now, the filing is free.
Okay. And lastly, from Lisa, what happens if the landlord appeals the sealing?
If they appeal it or if they object to the sealing?
So the way that it's phrased is, what happens if the landlord appeals the sealing? I assume she means they object to the sealing.
Okay,
Or Lisa, if you want to jump in and correct me.
No, you're absolutely right. What if they object and they don't want it sealed?
if they're objecting to the sealing and they respond within that 21 days, then there's a hearing that takes place on the merits of whether or not it should be sealed. So usually so far we've had about, I want to say about 150 to 200 of these cases, and we haven't received anybody who wanted to object to it and have a hearing. But if a housing provider would be interested in objecting, they could file that objection and then a hearing would occur. And at the hearing, the court would determine the merits of the case. So whether or not this is something that should be sealed or shouldn't be sealed. And usually that's going to depend on the arguments that are made in front of the court. Hopefully that makes sense.
And again, thank you so much, Marty. Fantastic program to finally get off the ground. And we're going to keep us on time, quickly transition then to Emma Smales. Emma is the Director of Data and Impact at Learn to Earn Dayton. She helps define and solve complex problems using data before joining Learn to Earn Data. Before joining Learn to Earn Dayton, Emma supervised health promotion teams at both Public Health Dayton, Montgomery County, and the Clark Community Combined Health District. And today we have Emma speaking about the Access to Counsel program being launched in the city of Dayton. Thank you, Emma.
Thank you, Samba. Okay, so happy to be here. Like Samba said, I was previously at public health for about 5 years and have moved over to the education side. But the work we're doing now is to make sure students can be successful in school by looking at all the things that impact them outside of school hours, right? So one of those things is housing. So there is a critical need for housing. I don't have to tell everyone here about that. Renters facing eviction are almost always unrepresented in court. I have some data later that I will show you about the city of Dayton's representation. And just like I'm glad Marty shared beforehand, because we all know that an eviction record can often disqualify a tenant, not just from getting accepted into private housing, but also from federal housing assistance. So really glad that Marty and his office are doing that sealing work. And even though we do not have demographic data from evictions, we do know that by looking at where evictions happen, and that evictions are happening most often to Black and Latino people, and especially women with children. And just to bring it back to why Learn to Earn is doing any of this work, housing instability is a predictor of students' success in school, including absenteeism. So in 2023, we saw that 63% of homeless children were chronically absent from school in Montgomery County. So you've seen me here before, and there's a lot of work going on in Dayton around housing. There's a lot of groups doing different things. The last time I think I was on one of these was to talk about source of income protections, which I worked on through the Social Determinants of Health Housing Work Group, which is still ongoing. The city of Dayton passed their housing policy platform, which included the Access to Counsel program in that plan. And then Learn to Earn led a Northwest Dayton partnership planning period with the Northwest Dayton residents, where they also highlighted eviction prevention and access to counsel as programs they really wanted to see happen in their city. So with all of that going on, we really thought that this program was important to bring to Dayton. And I'll show you some of the data as to why we think that. And just so, again, Learn to Earn's role in this, we helped create this resident-led plan in Northwest Dayton that include all these neighborhoods, and actually it's almost all the things we talked about today were in that plan. So Salem Avenue, work doing more retail and housing along Salem Avenues in that plan, and then eviction preventions and housing protections are all in that plan. So we are working on fulfilling the requests of the residents. Okay, so this is my bread and butter. So let's talk about the numbers. So this is our number of cases per quarter from January 2022 through December 2023. And this is just for the Dayton Municipal Court. So thank you, Marty, and Marty's office for getting us the data. They've been wonderful to work with. We are increasing each year the number of eviction filings. This is a map of where the eviction filings have occurred in Dayton. You can see they concentrate in the northwest, west, and then also some on the east side. This is the list of zip codes where the evictions occurred. And again, this is a 2-year period. But you can see that the vast majority of the evictions happen in 45406 and 45405. And it's actually almost half of all evictions in Dayton occur in those 2 zip codes. And then this is a table on tenant representation. So you can see here that the number of self-represented tenants is about 97%. Able represents 2% of tenants, and only 1% of tenants have a private lawyer. And then you can see the other side of it, where property owner representation, only 11% are self-represented, but 89% have a private lawyer. So we know that this creates a power imbalance, and we know from other cities that have passed a right to counsel or an access to counsel ordinance or have programs that they are that tenants who have representation in cases tend to have much better outcomes than those that do not. So what are we doing? All right, so the access to counsel pilot is going to serve Northwest Dayton, so residents in 45405 or 45406 that fall below 200% of the federal poverty line and have children in the household or a pregnant person in the household will qualify for the pilot. Now, we do have a limited capacity because we only have one attorney that will be taking these cases at Able. It's an attorney at Able. And so we think they'll probably be able to handle about 10 cases per month. Now, if you guys remember the numbers we just looked at, we know that that's going to be a drop in the bucket, right, of all the evictions that are getting filed. So another important qualification is that they need to have a defense in the case. So there does have to be something that the lawyer can argue, right, in the case. So it won't be all cases that will get taken by Able. However, we are working with Omega CDC to not only do warm handoff referrals and kind of wraparound services for families that are facing evictions, but we'll also be able to help the referrals coming through Omega have additional legal advice. Even if their case isn't going to be fully taken by a lawyer, they can at least talk to someone who can give them legal advice. So another big part of this pilot is the evaluation piece, because we can only afford to do such a small number of people. We really know it's important that we are going to ask to scale this later on. And so to do that, we need to know the benefit, right? What money are we saving? What's the benefit to the community? And what does it look like at the end? And so we have hired Stout that does evaluations on access to counsel programs all over the country. They've done it in Cleveland, Cincinnati, and then a lot of places outside of Ohio. So they're the experts in this, and we're really excited to see what we come up with at the end. And again, wraparound services. So we're also looking at doing monthly education sessions, so like know your rights sessions, as well as working with the Dayton Tenants Union to do maybe clinics, things like that, so that we know we're not gonna be able to help everybody. So how do we help? How else can we reach people and try and help them, knowing that we can't represent every tenant in an eviction case in Dayton. And then the last thing is we are launching hopefully November 12th. And so this should start in about a month, or no, like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And they will be able to call Able's the current hotline that Able uses, and they will get the tenant will get put into the program once they've gone through the screening process. So just thank all our partners. We are also in a design sprint right now for Access to Counsel through Results for America. And so we meet not only for 2 hours on Wednesday, but we also meet for an hour on Monday. So all of these partners are giving us so much of their time to do this work. And we really appreciate everything. And we really think this is going to be a great program. And then our funders, so Blue Meridian Partners, Right Pack Credit Union, Sunshine Fund, and the Dayton Legal Heritage Foundation have all contributed funds so that we can do this program. And I can't see the chat, but I do see that questions are coming in. So I'll end there and let Samba take over.
Thank you so much, Emma. That is fantastic. And we're going to get to the questions in chat. I just want to really highlight this. So you've spoken about that cost benefit analysis. Are you able to really just explain a little bit about what you mean about the external cost of eviction? Like, what does it cost a school board? What does it cost the local government when there's an eviction?
Yeah, so part of the evaluation is going to basically tell us not only how much it would cost us to scale this project, so citywide, countywide, but it will also be able to give us some numbers on what the county or the city would save in terms of being able to not have people displaced from their homes. So the amount of money it costs to house people in a shelter, right? And then there's a lot of projections, like cost projections you can do on the money you can save with mostly human services by not having people displaced from their home. And then looking at things like kids who miss more than 10% of school, which is being chronically absent, tend to do worse on proficiency exams, and then they tend to graduate high school at a lower rate, and then they tend to not go to secondary. And so then it's not just a cost to our human services that we're all paying for, but it's also a cost on our community, right? We want everyone to be productive citizens, and to do that you have to have your basic needs met, right? And so yeah, hopefully about a year we'll have a lot of data and a lot more to share after we've gone through this.
Fantastic. And just one question really quickly, because I know some of us in the space are more used to the right to counsel language. Can you explain what's right to counsel versus access to counsel?
Yeah, well, so since we know we can only serve such a small number of people during this pilot, access to counsel just felt like a better language choice. So the right to counsels around the country have really been like passing ordinances or in like jurisdictions to guarantee a right to counsel for tenants. So that's more like how a public defender is guaranteed, right? Like, so the difference between right, meaning every tenant would get access to its representation, versus access, meaning we only have a certain number of spots, unfortunately.
Okay. And I'm going to really quickly jump to the questions from chat. So we have this question from Tom. Is the HRC considered a partner? And I don't think we're officially partnering with you on this. Is that right? Right.
Yeah, I mean, we have the city of Dayton as a partner, but I mean, yeah, HRC is not an official partner, but they are involved in sort of all of our conversations. Yeah, I was like, Samba is like still my best friend, but
and these are going to be some kind of specific demographic questions. I know we'll have the answers. Do you know what percentage of these evictions are from private landlords?
Okay, so I do have data on who the evictors are. Hold on, I'll pull it up really fast. So we all know, or maybe we don't all know, but
Emma, I can answer this question too.
Okay, go ahead. I'll pull up my data. You talk.
Yeah, I mean, typically speaking, the vast majority of filings in Dayton Municipal Court are private landlords and entities. So one of the big one is GDP, or Greater Dayton Property Management. They have their own private docket. And then also one attorney also has their own private docket here in Dayton Municipal Court. So it depends whether or not they're private investors, or I would say the vast majority of people have attorneys that are there. There are very few that actually come down and it's some individual who is evicting somebody from their house. It's usually they're represented by counsel and go through the process that way.
All right, thank you so much. And then there's another question on the eviction demographics. Do we know what percentage of these evictions are from absentee landlords?
So we do have a list of the landlords that file the eviction. So you could look up all of the LLCs and see which ones are here, which ones are out of state. I mean, you can look at all of that. I haven't delved into it to see which ones are like absentee. And honestly, with LLCs, you might not actually know that answer.
I
All
would
right,
say
thank
that
you.
would be extremely difficult to determine whether or not somebody what classifies as an absentee landlord, and then
Yeah, if you ever have a few interns to dedicate to a task, we'll get the answer to that. And we had a question from Tara, but it looks like it was already answered. The pilot will serve 125 households, and that's what the maximum number of spots would look like. And so in the end, thank you so much, Emma, on that. And we're going to just very quickly transition directly to John Zimmerman. John is Vice President of the Miami Valley Fair Housing Center. He manages education and outreach for the organization and also conducts fair housing workshops for consumers, targeted outreach to vulnerable populations, and targeted work in low to moderate income neighborhoods, as well as working with municipal staff, planning departments, social service and charitable organizations, and really anyone whose work intersects with housing. And John is going to be presenting on fair housing updates, specifically talking about a pretty remarkable report that has been put together. And John, thank you.
Thank you. So let me get my PowerPoint going here, and it will just take me a second. So we are very fortunate at the Fair Housing Center to get some funding from HUD, and we received a grant in 2023 that two grants, and both of them included some tasks involving environmental justice in investigations and education in historically redlined zip codes. And so these were the 10 zip codes on the west side of Dayton that are in the red line maps from the 1930s. So we conducted listening sessions, and we also did a digital survey. We did this in conjunction with Sinclair sociology professionals and students, and we collected both quantitative and qualitative data. And so these are the events that we did, and due to time, I'm not going to describe all these, but you're going to get this PowerPoint for having attended today, and you can take a look at where we did these 5 sessions. So we had 145 respondents from the survey, and we had 36 participants in 3 listening sessions. So these were the zip codes, and one of the things, this is a great thing to do when we did our outreach, we saw that we did not reach a lot of people in 28, 27, 08, 18, 16. And in the future, if we can do this, we will do some targeted outreach to those areas. But we did have a lot of people from 17, 06, 02, and 05. So we found that half of the people have lived there 1 to 10 years, and a little over half have lived there 11 to 60 years. So there was a lot of people who had a lot of history in these zip codes. And we had more women than men, but not significantly. We had A lot of minority residents because we focused on 10 zip codes that are historically African American. We did have just a few Hispanic, and we had a lot of owners and people who had owned their homes for a long time. And then our age group, we had people from all ages. You can see it was fairly evenly divided. So, and then about 75% of the survey takers were Black African American, and around 69% of the people who were at the listening sessions were Black or African American. So we call this "Let's Hear Your Voice." And so we asked people things like, were you or anyone in your household exposed or concerned about pollutants while living in West or Northwest Dayton? And the majority of the people, both in the survey, up to about 60% said yes. And the survey and the listening session. And here is some comments that we got on the experience with pollutants. Where we lived, the plant gave off some black soot all the time. So when I was a little kid, they thought I had asthma. But until the air and environment got cleaned up, they didn't know I was okay. What those factories did from day to day affected what we did and where we did it. It's still doing the same thing now. Another person, I remember you didn't hang your laundry out on the day that Inland was producing that soot. You didn't go out and have a backyard cookout when the meat plant was processing. There were certain days when the tire company was doing what it did that it left off pollutants in the air. So you were constantly, no matter where you are, adjusting, trying to make do with the environment you're in and overcome. And these two comments came from people who had owned their homes on the west side of Dayton for over 50 years. So, and they had lived there even longer. They lived there, when they were children. So they had great history in Dayton. And so we asked people, what do you see as the biggest environmental injustice in West or Northwest Dayton? And without reading all of these, I'm just going to go to the results. You can see it was vacant housing and neighborhood blight. People really expressed both on the survey and in the listening sessions that getting to grocery stores to get good food was hard. People who owned their homes could not get their homes to rise in value. And then we have this thing, we had a lot of people telling us different things. And then it was followed by lack of green space, substandard housing, and industry admitting hazardous pollutants. So, but vacant housing, neighborhood blight was the number one concern. If you look at the number of vacant structures, one person said, the number of blighted structures, the disrepair, the disinvestment that you see in our neighborhood, it overall affects not only your health, but your mental health. And it also affects the overall positivity and lack of, I'd say, pride of engagement in the community. Some blighted structures are fire piles. They're all scattered about the city, sitting there for quite some time, and we're breathing all those toxins from the fire. One woman said, I've got to go to work. I got to pay my bills. I can't pause to deal with the blighted property and all the things that really I look at every day. It's psychologically impacting me. We have rodents, roaches, rape, and high crime. I grew up in Dayton. What I see is conditioning's worsening, not getting better. So housing and neighborhood blight was followed by lack of family wealth caused by inability to have homes increase in value and the inability to get low-cost, healthy food. So those are the big concerns of over 75% of all the people in both the survey and the listening sessions. And what we have suggested is that all municipalities have a fair housing lens on the development of all housing, transportation, education, healthcare programs. Someone in chat asked whether or not the housing on Salem Avenue was going to be market rate. And we think that that's important if it's market rate or if there's going to accept subsidies. But we also want to know, is it going to be accessible to people with disabilities? And that is a big thing that we heard out there, was that people with disabilities had a hard time just going down the sidewalk or getting into housing. So we believe that all municipalities should develop an equity plan, and developers need to consider whether all communities and members of protected classes have equitable access to assets, and which make the place they live a place of opportunity. And finally, we believe that any government that receives federal funding has to affirmatively further fair housing. And if they do an equity plan, there should be two prongs. It should be a balanced approach. Bring investments to disinvested areas to improve housing, infrastructure, community assets in underserved communities. And then for people who can't wait for a long time, they have kids that are getting ready to go into high school or something, enable families to seek greater opportunity by moving to areas of the community that already enjoy better community infrastructure and community assets. And those two prongs would help a jurisdiction satisfy its obligation to affirmatively further fair housing.
Fantastic, John. Thank you so much for that. And one question that I know that I have is that, we both know that just in the last few years, we've really seen HUD and the Department of Justice really start emphasizing, they're setting a lot of attorneys, a lot of enforcement action, and millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars into the Combating Redlining Initiative. And for you, what would combating redlining look like at a local level?
Well, it looks like concrete, visible change. I want to drive out to Hoover Avenue, and I want to see on Hoover Avenue the nice lighting that's going up on Salem Avenue. Very little lighting. I want to see when I go out to Olive Road Baptist Church, I don't want to feel like I'm in a third world country bumping on cobblestones that are 500 years old. Okay. So that it is concrete change. I want to see parks. We could have a lot of trees around, but if parks aren't maintained, then who wants to go to them? Okay. If equipment is faulty and breaking, you can't take children there where they might get hurt. And so combating redlining is doing huge investment into all 10 of the historically redlined districts. And I know that that there has been certain neighborhoods that have been chosen, but we need a master plan that looks at all 10 zip codes if in fact we are going to turn around property values so that and property values, unfortunately, in this state are linked to the efficacy of our schools, and the Dayton school system could really rise in value with a greater investment through taxpayer dollars.
And you already spoke this a little bit, but so the city of Dayton has really emphasized investment in green spaces and ensuring that all zip codes have access to green spaces, parks. They've launched the Office of Sustainability, and it's a really big initiative that the city is rightly proud of. But there is a disconnect where when you speak to residents in these neighborhoods, sometimes they feel that they don't have access to green spaces. They're not seeing those benefits coming in. And can you speak to why do you think there could be that disconnect?
Well, personal perception of green space availability can really differ from the data. So the data shows we've got 10,000 trees, but then we go into the parks and some of the trees are dead. and that you know that there's litter and all kinds of unseemly things there, and so depending on a person's circumstances and the neighborhood characteristics, we can go into one neighborhood and the park is maintained because maybe even some of the residents just use their own money to go in and do it. Okay, and then the next park down the way, there isn't that local neighborhood thing that allows that to happen. So we don't have a Manco in every neighborhood and Manco's Pocket Park is and their meadow is really a super investment. And I know that Jules didn't speak to this, but there are plans to replicate what Manco has done in 8 or 10 other places across the city. And so maintenance, I think, and safety concerns, and having can a person's wheelchair get to the park amenities and use them? Is there a place to go to the bathroom at a park for a person in a wheelchair? So people's perception is different based on who they are and what the parks are that they have access to.
And we do have a question from chat. What has the city of Dayton invested in these zip code areas over the past 10 years? What does the city plan to invest in these areas in the next few years?
Well, I am not going to answer that because you got to see only 50% of my full presentation. Some of our staff went to the Office of Sustainability, who is making a master plan, and we did the full presentation to them. And we need to bring the Office of Sustainability back to this format on the Fair Housing Collaborative and let them tell, because they are working very hard. I'm really excited. They have initiated their own listening sessions so that people should look and see, that, on the City of Dayton website, if they go to the Office of Sustainability, they'll see where they're having those listening sessions. And so that's, I can't wait to bring them on after the first of the year when we resume these and get to hear what the master plan is.
All right, fantastic. John, thank you so much for the presentation and for speaking here today. And I just want to thank everyone for joining us here today. I'd like to thank our speakers for continuing to volunteer their time and update us on what's happening in the community.